Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hi there, and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we are radiating solidarity with my new friend, Darci Graves. Darci and I met on Facebook, as many relationships start, through social justice and, new thought about social justice and being an ally, et cetera, et cetera. And those of you who have been watching our podcast on YouTube, because we're on YouTube as well as iTunes, Google Play, and all that good stuff, you'll notice the layout is a little bit different. Darci is the maiden voyage of doing video or web conferencing type of podcasts. And so this opens up a whole new possibility in terms of greeting guests from all over the world. Honestly, Darci, you used to live in Kansas City, and
I do.
Now you're not in Kansas City. Okay, so the group that Darci started is called Ally is a Verb, and I've enjoyed this Facebook page very much. It's I believe it's a public page; anybody can join it.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's for people who are interested in being a good ally to people who might be other, people who may be a bit different, how we can, and anybody can be an ally, how we can communicate and advocate for others. It's basically compassion. So it's like radiating compassion. Yep. All right. So Darci,
absolutely.
And about that. So you started the group Ally as a Verb, and so is solidarity like your main gig?
It's not in my job title or my job description, so to speak. But as I've been preparing for this conversation and thinking about it, I think it really is kind of the underpinning, solidarity, respect, being able to connect with others where they are, as opposed to trying to bring them, trying to meet them where I am, so to speak.
Absolutely. I teach Sunday school, and in one Sunday we were talking about, let's set the rules for our classroom, because we had a bunch of new kids join, and let's set the rules for the classroom. And somebody said, well, I think one of the rules should be treat other people as you would want to be treated. And then one kid said, I think we can do better than that. We should treat other people as they want to be treated.
That's fantastic. And that's actually, you mentioned I used to live in Kansas City, and I actually used to teach at the UMKC School of Medicine. And I did an annual workshop for them that I called Your Golden Rule Might Not Be Mine, and other rules of cultural competency. Because, when the golden rule came about, I think we were far less mobile. We didn't have the internet to meet these new people. So we were all growing up in the same town with the same norms, and with the same people. And people knew each other and knew each other's families for generations. So there was kind of this shared construct. So it made perfect sense then to treat others as you would want to be treated, because you had all of these shared values. But now, and increasingly so, as we continue to be more mobile, have far greater diversity and awareness of diversity, it really is trying to connect with other individuals and find out how they want to be treated, because it may not be the same. And even if they visually look like they might have the same values as you, there's no way to guarantee that anymore. I'm not sure if you could ever guarantee it, but you certainly can't assume that anymore. And so just being able to connect at the human level and finding out what makes sense for them, and letting them know what makes sense for you. It's a bi-directional sort of thing. I think people start to, well, I wouldn't care if they did that, but it's not about the you in that instance. It's about connecting with them and then negotiating from there.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because it's not all about us. We need to be
It's,
reaching out to others.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So you started this Facebook group, Ally is a Verb. Can you tell us a bit about what that means? Ally is a verb. We think about people being an ally. So what
hmm
does that mean to you?
So, just to give some additional context, ally is a verb. I actually started, it was 2 years ago on Monday when I launched it. So this is a timely podcast because I feel like it's the 2-year anniversary.
That's great.
But it was initiated because there was a lot of conversations happening at the time about the importance of allies and the importance of making sure that folks understood that, identifying themselves as allies, as they were a safe place, because there was a lot of precipitating events that were in the news. So there was a lot of discussion at that time. And those precipitating events are rarely positive sorts of things. And my fear as a longtime ally is when the news cycle changes, people's attention spans change. They move on to the next thing, just like the news cycle moves on to the next thing. And so the two things that I wanted to try to accomplish with ally as a verb is, one, it's more than just saying, hey, I'm an ally. You don't get to just hang a sign or wear the badge and say, I'm an ally, and then go about your business as usual. It's something that you have to actively do and actively pursue daily. And it's an ongoing effort. And then I wanted to create, the reason I chose to do this on Facebook was because I wanted to make sure that we were keeping this concept or construct a little bit more in the forefront. So if we were routinely posting about allyship things and being an ally and things you can do as an ally, I was hoping that that would help keep it a little bit more top of mind rather than just, here's a crisis and now I'm going to go be an ally and then I'm going to come home and go back to business as usual.
Right. I think that is so important because we don't live in a vacuum. There are
No,
people in the world, all over our community, that can use an ally at any time. It's not just like a one-time event. It's like, I don't go here,
right.
ally. Awesome.
Yeah, and and I think we talked about this as we were preparing. This isn't a political thing because I've been an ally since I was in college. I've been an ally since before I could vote. And people need allies regardless of who is in power or what the situations are, because there are always groups in need who need to have their voice elevated and amplified, and who need help from us to dismantle the barriers and areas of oppression that they might be facing given the givens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're always showing what's in the spotlight. It's like, the content is so relevant and so up to date, what different groups are doing in terms of raising awareness, being an ally. It's really excellent content. So I applaud that.
Good.
Thank you. Um, so why is this whole question of social justice and allyship even important to you?
Um, as cliche as it sounds, this is just the way I was born. I was raised, but it's just always been important to me. As I've aged, I've been able to attach more of a vocabulary to it. I think there's two quotes that kind of epitomize how I try to approach life in general. And one is attributed to Paul Wellstone, which is we all do better when we all do better.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of a fundamental thing. And then there's the often quoted Gandhi, we must be the change we want to see.
Absolutely.
And so, pulling those two things together, and recognizing that as a white, straight, cisgender, middle class woman, I am just inherently born with so many privileges.
Absolutely.
And I find it mind boggling and a little mind numbing on occasion that my life is inherently better or less obstructed because of how and where I was born. And so I think everybody should have the opportunity to achieve at the level that they want to achieve. And our systems aren't set up for that. And so it's just this inherent sense that, and to say, I want the world to be more fair sounds trite, but I would love for there to be a greater opportunity for equal opportunity. And I think, some things that we tend to forget, there's a great meme that's been going around on Facebook and other social medias about equal rights doesn't mean less rights for you.
Right.
It's not pie, which is puts a funny spin on it, but that's, I just keep, I'm like, it's not pie. I don't understand.
Exactly.
I fundamentally just don't understand why this has to be a thing, and it boggles my mind that it is. And so I try to spend my free time or my passion or my effort and energy into making it less of a thing, because even though I didn't have anything to do with setting up the systems, it's part of my job as somebody who inherited this system of privilege to try to dismantle and elevate others, to dismantle, the pieces that hold other people back and help lift up those who are not currently represented by the system. And that can mean a myriad of things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There was another meme that I thought you were going to be quoting that was, is that white privilege does not mean that my life has not been hard. It just means that the
Right.
color of my skin is not what's making it harder.
Exactly. So, our systems were built, I don't want to say built because built is the wrong verb, were created by the majority for the majority.
Right. Absolutely.
Period. Whether that be sex, sexual orientation, race, gender identity, religion, spirituality, all of those things. We are, the majority is the one who created the system. And anytime you don't fall into one of those majority categories, you're facing barriers. And so I inherited a lot of those privileges. And that doesn't mean that I don't struggle, and that doesn't mean that it's not hard. It just means that I'm not, as you said, I don't have those additional roadblocks put in front of me. One of the analogies that people like to use is a racetrack. And so obviously the person who's on the inside of the track, if everybody's lined up equally, at the same place, the person on the inside track has the shortest distance to run.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and that's more how I try to equate privilege, because people get very touchy about it, and I get it. But again, it's not pie. We're just trying to give everybody kind of that equal footing.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's wonderful. And I don't know if you knew this about me, but my daughter is biracial. And so
Oh, okay.
this really like literally hits home to me and how
Hmm.
people might see her as she grows up. Do you, in your family or in your chosen family even, do you have those around you who could really benefit from allyship?
Absolutely. My chosen family is quite diverse
Mm,
from across the spectrum of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, all of the things that I've kind of already mentioned. Um, and so many of them can benefit from allies. Uh, and I do it for them, but I do it for you know, the the great, the thems that I have not yet met.
mhm.
Um, but it's something I certainly talk about with my friends about what can I do or what can I do better. But I don't rely on them. And I think this is an important part of being an ally. I don't rely on them to educate me. I
Mhm.
educate myself, and then I may ask them questions, but it's not incumbent upon the marginalized individual or the marginalized community to educate the majority. The majority needs to kind of figure it out, and then find out how best to help, as opposed to, going up to your daughter and say, tell me everything there is to know about being biracial in Kansas City in 2018, because that's not
No, she's 12 for
that's
Christmas.
not her burden.
It's not her.
It's my burden to figure that out.
Exactly. And honestly, to me, at least, practicing social justice and being a good ally is really perhaps selfishly about me. I want to be a more complete human. I want to be a
Hmm.
better citizen. I want to show more love and compassion. And because it's
Absolutely.
anything to do, it's
Right. Yeah. I think I think that's an important nuance, because it's okay if you're doing it for yourself to a certain extent, and you give yourself the cookie or the pat on the back,
it's
um,
not even the cookie or the
and
pat on the back.
say, I feel good about doing this,
Mhm.
but it's not okay to go to the marginalized community and say, look at all the things that I did for you. Aren't I great?
No,
Because
no.
again, it's not about you. So it's that balance.
Right, right, right. And so, yeah, it's not about the cookie or the pat on the back. It's about
Right.
I want to be a better person and
But no, absolutely.
be a
I
better.
didn't mean to imply otherwise. I
No,
just
no, no.
using those as similes or metaphors or what
Because
have
I
you.
see that in the in the community sometimes. People who wear
Hmm.
allyship as a badge sometimes, but really, and there's all this talk about political correctness, and that term takes a lot of heat, but it's not really accurate though. It's not about being political, and it's
Right.
being correct to a point, but really it's about compassion. If someone,
Yes.
treating people as they want to be treated. If I were to tell you my name is Christy and you call me Shirley, then that's not respectful. It's just about respect. To me,
Yes.
what we call PC is really being respectful, about respect, and
Hmm.
understanding that another person has their own identity and their own story, and then find
Hmm.
how we can support their story as we want them to support ours. So
Absolutely.
it's a passion. So what else are you doing to enact social change? Is there anything else that
Oh,
works?
um, so I do a lot with, so I, moderate the ally as a verb. And then through I work, just to pull back the curtain just a bit. So my work is centered in, uh, I work adjacent to kind of the healthcare field, and my work is about increasing culturally and linguistically appropriate services within that healthcare. So figuring out how we can better serve uh, individuals from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So as a part of that, there's a thing, and I'm trying not to be too academic about it, but there's a concept called the social determinants of health. So, knowing that your geography or where you live impacts your health, your security, your access to food, all of those social determinants pieces. So that's kind of the long way of saying one of the things that I do as a volunteer basis as part of my office is I do, I call them passive community service projects for my office 3 or 4 times a year, where we do donation drives for various groups that relate to the social determinants of health. So we've done donation drives for domestic violence centers. We've done donation drives for homeless communities, for literacy centers, for education systems, and those sorts of things. So always trying to embed that in whatever I do. And then another hobby of mine, again, in that kind of selflessness sort of vein, is that I decided a few years ago that I needed a hobby that didn't involve the computer, because I was doing a lot of blogging for groups, or I do a lot of digital photography, and so that's always computer-based. So I taught myself, in an effort to get away, to unplug a little bit, I taught myself how to make hats and scarves on just those round plastic looms that you can get at your general craft store. And so now I make hats and scarves, and I donate those to various organizations. So it lets me create. It's very therapeutic and meditative to create them. But then there's not a pile of things in my house, because I could have taken up painting, but then I'd be surrounded by canvases with no place to go. But so I said, what can I do? And so one of the things that I do in my free time is I have a web link that darcigraves.org, and off of that you can see regarding hats, and it's all about heads need hats. And then necks need scarves, but heads need hats. And so, really figuring out how we can help people through just basic acts of kindness, providing them a handmade hat and scarf that helps keep them warm, but it also lets them know that somebody out there was thinking specifically of them in that moment, and kind of imbuing it with positive energy and love. And so in the 4 or 5 years since I started doing this, I think I've donated over 300 hats and nearly 200 scarves.
Wow.
To various groups in the Mid-Atlantic area, which I'm located in Maryland, in the Mid-Atlantic area, but I do send quite a bit back to Kansas City. So there's a number of hats that I just provided to a group of friends who adopt foster kids who are in the Kansas system, and so sent them nearly 9 pounds of hats and scarves that I had made. And so those will be distributed to kids in need. And again, they get to have this handmade hat and scarf that's in their favorite color, and the tag says made specifically, made with love for, and their name, by Darci. And so they get to know that there was somebody out there thinking of them. And I hope that, I don't assume, but I hope that means something, and that can be something positive in their world. So, but anyway, so those are a few of the things that I do in my off hours.
That is beautiful. Your story about how heads need hats reminded me of a story that, again, my daughter, she's just amazing, and she just surprises me all the time. So we were volunteering one time. We do a lot of service work, and we were volunteering one time at a community kitchen, and it was dinner time, and we were serving, and all these people came in, and it was just surprising. We had never done anything like that. The people who come in, we were just surprised at the people who came in. And she says, Mom, and she was about 6 at the time. She says, Mama,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so funny. We are all the same, but we just have different heads. And I thought that was a
Yes.
beautiful child-centered way to look at that. We just have different heads.
Yeah. Yes.
So
No, out of the mouths of babes.
absolutely.
They have the clearest and most genuine way of articulating what we're trying to do. One of the things that I lean on, especially as a verb, in addition to being a place of resources and a place to share education, is that people were asking for motivation, and those sorts of things, because sometimes it's hard to be an ally.
Yes.
There is that you do face those discouraging times when you see repeated events in the news. But my niece, I don't have any children, but I have lots of nieces and nephews, both by blood and by kinship. And my niece, when she was probably 2.5, my eldest niece, when she was 2.5, was walking with my brother, and she saw a little boy fall down on the playground. And she says, Daddy, he fell down. And he's like, yeah, he did. And she goes, he needs to fall up. And if that isn't just the definition or the embodiment of resilience,
Oh, I love that.
and so I really focus, and I've had my own things that go on in my life, but it's really, so what I try to practice, or the way I describe it, is it's the art of falling up, because we all fall down.
Oh my
We
gosh.
all fall down, and we have to practice falling back up.
I love
And so, I have one of those, popular, bracelets that they have the words. You get to choose your word that you imprint on it.
Yeah.
And my bracelet says "fall up,"
Oh my God.
because it's just that reminder that we all have to get up again. We all have to, dust off and try again. But anyway, I just, we all have different heads, and we all need to fall up. It's that. It's such clarity, because I could spend 45 minutes doing a lecture on what does resilience mean, and my niece summed it up in 2 words,
2 words.
at the age of 2.
That is
fall up.
just fall up. Oh, that is beautiful. Oh my gosh. So in all of this work, I mean, there's got to be an end sight to this, an end vision for all of this. And what is your dream that, embracing solidarity, mirroring solidarity, teaching solidarity, what is your dream for this country? What do you hope people get out of this?
Well, again, it kind of falls back to my nieces, and to put it in terms of my work, as somebody who teaches and works in cultural competency, is that someday I would be able, someday that work would no longer be necessary.
Yeah.
And so that my niece someday, when I am old and sitting in a rocking chair, she would say, what did you used to do when you were my age? Or, what was your career? And I would say, well, I used to teach people about culturally and linguistically appropriate services. And she would look at me dumbfounded, and this is the dream. She would look at me dumbfounded and say, you had to used to teach that? Didn't people just know? And that's the dream. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of job security, but it's certainly the dream. And then if we could all just get it and respect each other and lift each other up and take care of each other, because taking care of we all do better when we all do better. So taking care of others is ultimately helpful to everyone, including myself, yourself, ourselves. And so, that would be the ultimate goal, is that I could retire and go work at an art museum or make hats full time or whatever. Or just wake up and go, I don't know what I'm going to do. My friends like to tease me. I was a professional, though I was working full time during most of it. I was, a professional student for quite a while. So I have 3 master's degrees, one of which is in communications, one of which is in religion and sociology, and one of which is in public policy. So I could quite easily see myself going back to school to learn about all new things if and when the time came. But like I said, I think there's still enough work to be done for another few years. So
there is quite a lot of work to do still. And
yeah, well, you asked me my dreams, or my hopes.
You hope to put yourself out of a job.
That's ultimately the goal, is to do it so well, or to have it resonate so much that it's not necessary anymore. But or get enough people on the same page that you can do that part time. I think it's all a continuum. So I hope we get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that looking at the news, sometimes we get a little discouraged because we think we're making a lot of progress in this area, and yet we see so much discrimination, so much racial violence, so much other violence. See it in the news. So I have to ask if you ever get discouraged, and if you do, how do you get yourself out of it?
I absolutely get discouraged. It's frequently disheartening to watch the news or to read the headlines, because sometimes I can't always stomach watching the news. But my current way of helping myself to fall up is that every time there is a news cycle that I find particularly heartbreaking or vexing, is I make a hat, or I make a scarf. And I try to figure out what, I may not be able to make good in that situation precisely, but I can try to channel that angst and that energy into a good activity and come up with something. I also take those opportunities to dig out more educational materials, or to find more motivational quotes, and I'll start to try not to flood, but I will post a lot to ally as a verb, so that people have some additional context and terminology and information about the situation, and putting it in that putting it into the larger context, so that we can continue to move forward. But my reaction is usually, if I'm struggling with something, I try to find someone, or try to figure out a way that I can help somebody else. And that generally is how I try to fall up or lift myself up out of whatever dark place might be happening.
I think that's wonderful. Mr. Rogers famously said, kids, if you're watching the news and you see something that's very upsetting, a large tragedy or something like that, just know that there are always helpers. Look for the helper.
Yes.
And I think that's a good remedy. Even when we ourselves are suffering, we can look at how we can help, because that part of service just lifts you. It helps you fall up when you learn how you can plug in, just having that resilience. Yes, I know a lot of people do get just discouraged sometimes. We feel like we're pulling, and then when we see something that just shows us how much more work we have to do, it can be a little discouraging. We have to keep each other positive.
Yes, And I think it's also important to, it's also important to practice self-care.
Yes.
It's okay to unplug for a weekend. It's okay to say, you know what, tonight I'm eating that pint of ice cream, or I'm having that glass of wine, or I'm getting that massage, or whatever it is. And then I'll get back to the work tomorrow. It's okay to take a step back every now and again. And I take a step back rather than take a step away. But it's okay to hit the pause button if you need to replenish, so that you can continue the efforts.
Right. And of course, at Radiate Wellness, we're all about taking care of self. We are our own caretakers, our primary caretakers. And so that self-care is so important, whether it's life coaching, whether it's getting energy work, or any of the other services that we do. But
Right.
I don't know if you have ever been in a choir or an orchestra before. But when you're in a choir or you're in an orchestra where people are playing wind instruments, we got to take a breath. We got to take a breath. And so choirs and these orchestras, they alternate taking the breath so that the tone is continuous.
Okay.
So I kind of
that's great.
the same way is that sometimes what you said about taking a breath, not taking, stepping back, not stepping away.
Mm-hmm.
We have to alternate those breaths. And even just in our own little circle, even in our own little circles, people are going through their own challenges. And if everybody's always needing help, we just take a breath to let everybody else kind of catch up. Yeah. So it's very important. I'm so glad that you mentioned the self-care, because it's essential.
Yeah. Because I think, and I'll speak for myself, but I think there's, when you see these kind of endless news cycles, and that's kind of our reality these days, I put that pressure on myself as, am I doing enough as an ally? Right. What more can I do? Right. How else can I help? And, it's that moment where you're like, okay, this is the part where I have to stop and I have to recognize what I am doing and seeing if there's any gaps that I can fill. But I also have to take that breath, and put on my own oxygen mask. Yes. Because I can't help others.
Right.
If I'm incapacitated.
Absolutely.
Or if I'm, just burnt out, crispy, fried, done. And so, figuring out what that is. And then again, and asking for help. That's another part of self-care is, if you are at the bottom, yes. Or if you feel yourself sinking, and reaching out to others saying, okay, how do we do this? What do we do? What can we do? And finding those shared voices so that you are part of a choir rather than someone who is trying to just do this as a solo act.
Right. Absolutely. That is so important. I just have one more question for you, Darci, and that is, what can we all do to be better allies, to be better citizens, to be more in solidarity with the humans around us? What might you say?
So I think to be a good ally and to be a better ally, and constantly improving yourself is, make sure that you are listening, that good active listening, not preparing for a response or not preparing a rebuttal, but really listening to where the pain or the issues or the frustration lies, and listening, and then educating yourself about how maybe to address those things, whether it be, in your family, in your office, in your community, there's so many levels of change that you can work on invoking. So figuring out what your level is, and then educating yourself about those things, and then doing something, and doing something. And I'm not diminishing the protests or marches or any of those things, because those are very valuable. But you have to do more than march.
Yes.
You have to do more than change your Facebook profile picture to reflect what you're vexed about.
Right.
Or what you're representing.
Right.
And what that action is can be different for a lot of different people. It may be writing letters. It may be volunteering. It may be making hats. It may be raising money. It may be just writing a check. But there are things to be done. And so then it's the allyship is in the doing. Because, all good intentions are great, but there has to be action behind the words.
Yes. Thus, ally is a verb. It's
exactly. Yeah.
Darci, it has been so much fun to talk to you. As we were kind of messaging back and forth prior to this interview, you said, yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot of nodding. We're going to have a good conversation, lots of nodding, because we're totally on the same page about this. Although you have so much more experience in this area, and I absolutely love that we have you. Someone who can share information. And I totally appreciate you. And I just appreciate you. Okay. So
well, and thank you for giving me this platform to talk about what I think is a very important topic.
Thank you so much. Yes, good. Well, it's so good to talk to you. Put a face with a name and a voice with a name. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.